All right, so we're taking a look at finishing up this section with more coordinate circles with Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to be finding right angles and right triangles really within a circle. A lot of times they'll call this the unit circle. The big thing is you always want to kind of make sure you're making a bow tie triangle. So what I mean is when they give you a point x comma y, so this is x comma y, and it's just generic because it could be anywhere. You always want to make it a bow tie. So you're always going to drop the height down to the x-axis, and that's going to be our right angle. If they give you a point over here, same idea. You want to drop the height to the x-axis, not to the y-axis. So it makes a bow tie. Or if you had a point over here, same thing, drop it to the x-axis. They gave you a point over here, you're going to make your triangle with the x-axis. So it kind of forms a little bow tie here. Things that are important to note for this, you're going to have values. You need to make sure when you answer your x and y, if it's in quadrant 1, it's positive, positive. If it's going to be in quadrant 2, it's going to be a negative, positive. Quadrant 3, it's going to be a negative, negative. And quadrant 4, it's going to be a positive, negative. The radius is always going to be positive. Okay. Okay, and if you hear my daughter in the background sometimes or the TV playing, it's because she's homesick. So that's why I'm making these notes. All right, so let's go ahead and start some examples because I think that's the easiest way to learn it. So you'll be given a graph like this, the unit circle. They're going to give you some sort of line with a degree. All of these angles, you should be able to make 30, 60, 90s or 45, 45, 90s every single time. We're not going to do one where you can't. So the first thing that we talked about was you're going to go ahead and drop the height down to the x-axis. So there's your right triangle. Notice that that angle is 60 degrees, which makes this angle 30 degrees here. So we need to go ahead and find out what x and y is. Well, first, notice that they've given us only one number, that this is 6. That's the radius. It's from the center to the end of the circle, which also means that this is 6 from the center to the end of the circle. Those are both the radius. So I can label this as 6. That's the only number I know. Well, because it's a 30, 60, 90, I know across from the 30 is the x, across from the 90 is the 2x, and across from the 60 is the x root 3. Wonderful. So I can solve for x. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. I know 6 is equal to 2x, which means x is 3. So I can sub that number back in. So this is going to be a length of 3, and this is going to end up being 3 root 3. So just using our normal 30, 60, 90. Okay, again, the goal is to find the coordinates here. That x doesn't necessarily mean it's the x we solved for. They're talking about x, how far are you on the x-axis? So how far are we on the x-axis is this far away. So that would be how far your x is. So this would end up being a 3. Now, when we're talking about the y, it's going to be how far are you on the y-axis? So y's are up and down. So this value will end up being y. So y will be 3 root 3. They're both positive because they're in quadrant 1. So you want to always check your signs. Okay, let's take a look at example B. So example B, we have first of all, a negative positive answer, if you notice, because we're in quadrant 2. And they give us 135. Remember, you always want to make the bow tie down. So there's my right triangle. So I need that inside angle. We know half the circle is 180. So 180 minus 35 leaves me with 45 degrees. So our triangle in here is a 45, 45, 90. So if we go ahead and label, we've got across from the 45 is x, and this is going to be x root 2. What do we know? They have one thing labeled for us. They have the radius is 4, which means this is also going to be 4 then, because both of them are going to be your radii. So that is the side that we know. So I'm going to go ahead and circle it and solve for x. So 4 equals x root 2. When I solve. I'm going to divide both sides by root 2. So x equals 4 over root 2. Can't have a root 2 in the denominator. So I multiply by root 2 over root 2, which gives me 4 root 2 over 2. And 4 over 2 is 2 root 2. So x ends up being 2 root 2. Okay. So I'm going to go back and label the things we know. X is 2 root 2. So that's this side as well as this side. All right. So my x is going to be how far it is on the x-axis. So if we look at the x here and the x here, that's going to match up to be 2 root 2. And notice it's going to be negative because it's on the negative side of the x-axis. For my y's, I'm going to go ahead and line up my y's, which is going up. Your y-axis is up. So the length of that is 2 root 2 as well. And it's going to be positive. Okay. Let's take a look at another type of problem. Example C is a little bit different. Notice in example C, they've told us the y coordinate. So now we're going to be solving for r, the radius. So let's talk about how we do that. First, we're going to go ahead and draw our right triangle, which always goes to the x-axis. They've told us 210. We know that this part is 180. So 180 minus 210 is 30 degrees. So this angle is 30 and this one is 60. And then I'm going to go ahead and label cross from the 90 is the 2x, cross from the 30 is the x, cross from the 60 is x root 3. So here they told us y is -3. So if you look at the y, which is this part, they're saying this has a length of -3. Well, technically 3 because it's a length. So you're going to take that -3, and that means that this length is 3 here. Okay, so now we do have a number. So we know x is 3, yay. And now I'm going to go ahead and plug that 3 back in. 2 times 3 is 6. And this is going to give us 3 root 3. And that's it. Not a lot of work for that problem. And I'm going to answer the question. What is x? So x corresponds to the x-axis. So that would be 3 root 3. But watch your signs because this answer is going to be a negative answer because we're in quadrant 3. So it's -3 root 3. And then lastly is the radius. The radius is this length from the center of the circle to a point on the circle. And that happens to be 6. And then we're done. So that's kind of what you do. So typically what I do when I'm in class is then I give students about 10-15 minutes to go ahead and try the rest of the problems. So if I were you, I would go ahead and pause me and I would try some problems and see if you can do it on your own. And then when you're ready, unpause me and see if your answers line up. So pause me now. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you've paused. And I'm going to quickly write down the answer so you kind of know if you need to pay attention or not for which problems. So square root 3, 1, -3 halves, -3 over 2 root 3. Or you can write that as -3 over root 3 over 2, or -1.5, but usually we keep it as a fraction. This is square root 2 over 2. This is negative square root 2 over 2. Let's see, hopefully you're doing well. We've got a -2 here, a 2 root 3 here, 4 root 3 over 3, and an 8 root 3 over 3. And here a -2 root 3, and then a 4. So hopefully you have those. If not, you are welcome to kind of talk to different classmates to figure it out. I'm just going to pick a couple to go ahead and take a look at. We did one very similar to one. Maybe we'll take a look at, let's take a look at 2. Okay, so 2, you want to go ahead and, first of all, if you got all the answers correct, you don't have to listen to me because that means you know what you're doing. So we're going to go ahead and make our right angle there. Drop it to the x-axis. And we're going to find our angle. So this is 180. So 180 minus 240 is 60. So this is 60 and 30 here. So the only other information we know is that x is 3, because that's 3, 0. I'm sorry, that is the radius is 3. Whoa. The radius is 3. It's from the center to the end of the circle. So that is a length of 3, which means this part right here also is a length of 3 from the center to the end of the circle. So let's go ahead and label that. I'm also going to label my 30, 60, 90. This is a 30. Or I'm sorry, that's an x. This is a 2x. And then we've got an x root 3. So I'm going to circle 2x and 3. That's the first thing I have to solve for. 2x is equal to 3. And that's how we get x is 3/2. If you write 1.5, that's fine as well. My answers here, don't forget, are going to be a negative because we're in quadrant 3. So now I'm going to take that 3/2 and just go ahead and plug it in everywhere. This is 3/2. And then this is going to be 3/2 root 3. So now when I'm going to go ahead and find the x is the x-axis right here. That's going to line up. It's negative again, so it's negative 3/2. And then when you're going to go ahead and find the y, which is vertical, that's going to be negative 3/2 root 3 because it's going down. All right, what else? Let's go ahead and take a look at number 5. So number 5 is one where they don't tell us the radius, they tell us the x value. So I think this is a good one to practice. So once again, you're going to go ahead and drop down your height. And we're going to figure out our angle. 180 minus 150 is 30. So we've got a 30, 60, 90 in here. Now you got to be careful here. They tell us -4. That's the x. So when they're saying -4, they're saying the length of x, which is that number over there. So instead of writing -3 though, I'm going to go ahead and write, instead of writing -4, I'm going to write +4 for the actual length, because a length can't be negative. Coordinates can be negative, but a length can't be negative. And then I'm going to label my 30, 60, 90. So we've got a 2x, we have an x, and we have an x root 3. So I'm going to go ahead and circle what I know, which is this part right here. And I'm going to solve that. I'm going to say 4 equals x root 3. I'm going to divide everything by root 3 over root 3, which means x equals 4 root 3, 4 over root 3. Can't have a root 3 in the denominator, so multiply by root 3 over root 3, which gives me 4 root 3 over 3, and that's all I can do. Oops. That root 3 back in there. And that's the value that I'm going to go ahead and plug in now. So here, that's going to give me 4 root 3 over 3. On this other side, it's going to give me 8 root 3 over 3, because I have to double that 4. Okay, so now when we take a look, we already know what x is, so they're going to ask for y. Remember, the y corresponds to going up because it's vertical. It's going to be positive because our answer is -positive in quadrant 2. And then it wants to know what the radius is. Remember, the radius is from the center to the point on the circle. You can also think of it as like the hypotenuse. And that is always positive. A radius is always positive because it's a distance. So there's really 2 types of problems that they can give you. One, like number 2, where they tell you what the radius is because it's from the center to the end of the circle. So they told you that 3 right there. And then the other type of problem is when they actually tell you an x or a y value. So that's really the 2 different types. Again, you're going to know if it's the radius because the radius is going to be on the, notice the radius ones, they have the label on the x-axis here. Okay. So I think that that is it. And the radius is like your hypotenuse. So I think that's it. If you've got more questions, try to talk to some of your classmates for those other 4. I usually don't end up doing all 6 of them anyways, but I will be in class next time, or you can email me or go to the Learning Lab. Lots of different options since I won't actually be there till Tuesday, right? Until I see you next time. So have a wonderful weekend.